All right, morning everyone. We're live. It's a special one. I have Lindsay from Lynn Does Investing, and Sarah Garrett will be here. She's just running a little bit late, but I was gonna joke around because I was gonna say that I had two rock stars on and they were gonna be on late for the live, but Lindsay popped in right before we started. So morning, Lindsay.
Good morning.
Yeah, so if anyone hasn't heard, I mentioned it yesterday too, and I did get approval from Lindsay to mention this. So stay on the lookout. She said, I believe May 12th is supposed to be her episode on Bigger Pockets Rookie coming out. So be on the lookout for that. But morning, Lindsay. How's everything going?
Everything's going good today. We had a interview before this one for my channel. So if anybody has not checked my channel, Linda's Investing, it's basically what my name is here appears. So
Yeah, I did put it in the chat. So if you haven't, go please subscribe. Got Frank here, Andy, Flavio's here, Jason. Morning, everyone. I know everyone is tuning in from Zuber. Also, just had a school community with Property Radar. I believe I was in for a little while, but I had to bounce off. But so this is going to be a fun one because I know Lindsay interviewed Sarah Garrett last week, who was one of the speakers at the ORAD event. And I guess Sarah, in chatting before the interview, may have heard some of Lindsay's story and really want to know more about that. So, Sarah's not here yet, but maybe you can kind of talk a little bit about, I guess, maybe coming to America, I guess, in a sense, and on why investing means so much to you or financial freedom.
yeah, I think when we were talking about it was Sarah was a young mom, a young mother, and the only way that she knew how to build wealth was by investing in her TSP and her 401k and also by buying properties, cash. But the reason why I felt so compelled to talk to her was because my sister also was a young mother, and my sister suffered a lot with preconceived notions about her, pregnancy, finishing high school, basically people around her telling her that she's not going to amount to anything. And it's so hard to see that from a young age. I was younger than her. It was really hard. And it's extremely more hard was because I'm from Lima, Peru. An immigrant. I immigrated here when I was 16 years old. But I grew up with three generations of my family living in the same household, like my grandparents, my parents, and me. Both of my set of grandparents were indigenous Peruvian. They grew up in rural areas of Peru, and we were really poor. Not as poor as my grandparents, but for example, like my parents never graduated high school because they had to work since a young age. My mom, because her dad died in a traumatic accident, and my dad, because he had 12 brothers and sisters and he had to work from a very young age. So when they met in Lima, when they had us, we had a house. We were never homeless, but we had a lot of financial hardship because of the economy of Peru. Many times during me growing up, my parents were unemployed, so we had to eat out of soup kitchens, and we really didn't have money to like pay for food. So that was what I was explaining to Sarah in the beginning when I was telling her my story, and then she was just like, "Oh, well, how did you make it out here?" And it turns out actually that my dad won the Visa lottery in 2006, and this is a program that's been going on in the United States for a while. But yeah, he was so lucky to won that Visa lottery, which eventually gave us residency to come here legally. So we came here. My parents left their country, and they were in their 50s, and took me and my younger brother here. And so when we came here, we came basically with a carry on and no money in our pockets. And so I had to learn the language. My parents did too, but it was harder for them because they were in their 50s. And at the moment, I didn't realize how brave it was for them. I just knew like everything was changing for us as kids. But I didn't realize how brave it was for them to leave their family, leave their house, leave their language, leave their culture just to provide more opportunities for us. So now looking back, it's like saying I leave and go to Germany and like learn German and try to provide something for my family. So we were explaining, I was explaining that to Sarah. That transition was super hard. I came here, I had to learn English. I had to learn what the economy was here. I had to translate for my parents. Like many child immigrants become their parents translators for everything, and I was submitting applications like job applications for my parents when I was trying to like use a dictionary back and forth, like what does this mean? And fill applications for like the MBE and IDs and things like that.
Hold on, sorry. Sarah said the link wasn't working, so I just sent her a new link. So hopefully she's listening also. So Sarah, I sent you a new link. Hopefully it'll be on soon. But yeah, I think that really touched Sarah, right? Like she really wanted to know more of your backstory and coming to America and whatnot. So I think the biggest question I always kind of think about is that money or financial talk, right? Because even my parents aren't immigrants, but even that money talk from their generation on how to build wealth is a different kind of mindset in a sense, right? They did it in a different way where, like you said, go to school, get that W-2, put your money in a home and just kind of sit on it, pay it off, and now you're wealthy in a sense. So was that kind of the mindset of your family, or how's that money talk been?
Basically, yeah. So since I was here, hi Sarah.
Hey guys.
Since I was here and I had immigrated, my parents basically were like, "Oh, you need to be a doctor because you're in the land of opportunities. You can go to college and become a doctor, and then you'll be set for life." And me being here for a couple years, I barely learning the language. I'm like, okay, how do I become a doctor? Like, I don't know. Let's find out. So when I was in school, I did really well, and I got into a couple schools, a few schools actually. I got a full scholarship for UC Merced, and I moved out there without having a car or a job or anything. I'm barely being in this country for 2 years, and we had to pay like $600 for housing, and the first quarter I was able to pay. My parents were able to pay, but both of my parents were still struggling, like working part time as housekeepers here in America. So by the time that bill came back for the next semester, even though everything else was paid for, housing, tuition, even the stipend for food, um, they couldn't do it. They couldn't afford those $600 and the rent and, me being in school. So I had to come back. And that was also a transition for me, like leaving a 4-year university to coming back to home and then having not planned and it's still thinking like, oh, this is the land of opportunities. We like, how do I become a doctor? So I had to like pivot, right? And I wasn't even fully understanding what student loans were or what kind of like aid I could apply for, because again, I was just so new to this country and still very much learning that there was like no guidance other than what I was trying to find out like on the internet. So I became a nurse instead. So I went to community college. I got my nursing license and became a nurse. But since the beginning, my parents were just like, you have all the abilities and then you have all the opportunities. So you need to do whatever you can to land a secure job, a secure W-2 job, so you can just be okay in the world.
All right, before we move on, though, let's welcome Sarah for tuning. I know you're busy, so thanks for jumping on. But yeah, like I said, this is kind of because Lindsay was interviewing you for her channel, and you kind of heard part of her story, and you were just blown away by it. So maybe what touched you about it when you guys got a chance to chat?
Oh God, like I don't even know where to start. Once again, I'm honored to be on you guys' channel. Yours today, Mark. Um, but yeah, talking to Lindsay, like she wanted to interview me to hear my story because she thought my story was amazing. But the more like questions I'm asking her, like, wait a minute, you didn't even start out as an American and you're an investor, right? And so for me, that was it intrigued me because the fact that that's one of the many excuses that I've heard from people over the years that I've tried to encourage them out of, like with their mind. And that was one of the kind of the aha moments for me, even too. I was telling her when I was in the military, because there was a lot of foreign men when they found out I was single, they wanted to marry me to come here. So I really began getting economics lessons from different guys from different African countries who just really wanted to come to the United States. And so as I listened to Lindsay, like, and then I think too, what blew my mind with Lindsay is that she was much older immigrating here to the United States as a teenager. And I feel like that's a blessing and a curse sometimes for people because her immigrating here, she's able to see the blessings that the United States has to offer that Americans really can't see because a lot of us get tunnel vision trapped inside of, this like cyclone or this tornado or whatever, of I can't do this, I can't do that, or you can have a baby, can't have a baby, or you have a baby at 16 and can't do that because of all these odds are stacked against you. But just like her language barrier by itself, I mean, that's just crazy to me to be 16, the language barrier, and then to still come here to find that American dream, ultimately to end up realizing, even too, yes, you have your 9 to 5, your W-2, but ultimately to build wealth in this country, you have to have some kind of business of your own, which in our case, it's rental properties. Each property is a business, right? And so I just like, I'm like, someone else really needs to hear her story of that journey. I mean, her whole foundation, like, even as I'm just sitting here thinking about, my mind is still blown because her whole foundation, like those foundational years are important, right, for a child. But her whole foundation was laid not in the United States, right? Her whole foundation was not laid in English. But to come here and still figure out a way how to build wealth for herself in spite of all of those barriers, it just, I mean, my mind is just blown, absolutely blown that she took, set out to accomplish that here as an American. And I just feel like more people need to hear her story to understand that, like, here's again another barrier, right? That, people would use as an excuse to not accomplish something or to begin building wealth for themselves. But that's what makes America so great, is that anyone can come here, right, and build something for themselves. And the thing is, like, there's so much money to go around. Like, we don't have to compete with one another for, like, or fight over different positions, on a football field or whatever. There's like hundreds of teams, right? And so I just think it's so neat, Lindsay, that you would set out to do that here when you had every excuse that you could have made to not be, I mean, just reading contracts, for God's sake. Seriously, English isn't your first language, but you still chose to resource and figure out how to do that. And I think it's just, it's crazy.
It sounds like it touched you, and you guys were getting ready for the interview. So that's why we put this together. And I know a lot of people have been waiting for it. So, but Jen is here. One of your biggest fans for both of you. But Jen does have a question for you, Lindsay. She says, "What's been the biggest challenge since coming here for you and your brother, and also your parents?"
I think the biggest challenge has been just the notion that people don't expect much of us because we didn't speak English, because we had an accent, just like didn't links us up to resources. Like when I was going to school, I didn't know I could get loans. I didn't know that I could, get a scholarships, or people just assumed that I didn't know much about anything. Like I was just gonna end up in community college, which I did. I don't do not regret community college whatsoever. But if I had like a little bit more guidance, just people that took a little extra time to explaining how things work, how credit scores work, how you need to build up financial security, any of that, like that was not hand down to us. And obviously we didn't have money, so we had to work for everything that we had. But there was just a lot of misinformation that I thought was missing because they just didn't think we were going to do anything.
Mm.
Jen also asked, do you feel you would have looked into FIRE, financially independent, retire early, and real estate investing if you didn't move to the US?
I don't think so. No, no, because there was no college expectation for me. There was no Once I graduated high school in Peru, I was just going to go into the workforce and help with the household because we were struggling. There was no look into furthering your career or anything like that. It was just going to be whatever you could do to help out family, which is like I said, we had three generations in my household, my grandparents, aging grandparents, my parents, and me, and we were all contributing to, just help pay for food and like clothes and things, necessary things. There was never a thought of I'm going to be able to invest and create wealth whatsoever. We were living in poverty. Yeah.
Sarah, I know you touched on earlier, like when you're on your tours and whatnot, and you met a lot of males that wanted to marry you or whatnot too. So, do you think it's because they just want to come here and get out of where they're from, or they actually see opportunities here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like I've like I said lived all over the world. I've also had foreign exchange student that lived with us as well. She was from Switzerland, which the Swiss are usually pretty financially stable. But I learned a lot even from when the we had about 6 months an exchange student that lived with us as well. Not to mention, like I said, I've worked with the British. I've worked with several different African country soldiers as well. I've worked with German soldiers. And it was the same thing every time. I thought it was a joke at first. And probably by the third foreigner that wasn't American that I met that was like, can I marry you? I'm like, this is for real, huh? And my platoon sergeant's like, duh. And so I just began to ask questions like, why? And so one of the things I learned is that they teach their kids early on about the United States, right? They teach their kids English early on, so that they can communicate here. And so a lot of people that I've met over the years, they wanted access to capitalism, is what they really wanted access to. The barriers that they have in other countries to be able to start their own businesses. I mean, for God's sakes, you look at President Trump, a business failed 5, 6 times, filed bankruptcy, and you're right back up again and can try again, right? I see that as something positive with President Trump, not negative. And I'm like, look at what you can do in America, right? And so I feel like foreign people, because they don't have access to a lot, they don't have sometimes access to running water, like Lindsay's saying, growing up with scarcity and extreme poverty. I mean, I didn't get to hear the whole story, which I'll play back about how they even got here to begin with. I can kind of speculate, but I just they teach their kids that there's things that they have access to here in the United States, and they do, and I feel like they value it more than we Americans do, because we Americans have always had that. And so when you grow up always having something, or when you've always had a good husband or always had a good wife, it's not until maybe they pass away that you realize just how good you had it, right? And so I feel like in America, because we've just always had access to these things, we take them for granted. Whereas, like, that's why, I mean, I can't tell you how many foreigners I've met, whether they're from India or Nepal or wherever, that come here. They choose to work together as a family because that's something good. I think that's good that comes from poverty, is you learn how to survive. But when you can take that same principle of surviving and transfer it over to building wealth, it's really, 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 really powerful. And so I feel like again, that's something people look at as negative, growing up in poverty. But I'm like, no, I can, live below my means really easily to continue building wealth, to have something greater. And so I just feel like foreigners, that's a blessing that they have in a way, because, they appreciate more what they have access to, especially once they're able to get here. And then, of course, they work together to bring their other family members here to get them citizenship as well. And they come here and work together. And within 5 years, they're worth multiple millions of dollars because they've studied our system, they've studied the blessing of capitalism, right? And so they come here and they choose to partake in that blessing that we have as Americans, that again, we're born into it and we just don't value it or appreciate it because we've always had it. We'd rather just complain and say, well, I can't do this because I'm a woman, or I can't do it because I had a baby at 16, or I can't do it because I'm a minority, right? But it's like, no, there's people literally were willing to pay me to marry me to come here. And it's like, I'll pay you later on if you marry me now, and some of them, at the time, they were friends that I worked with as soldiers. So I thought it was a joke. So I'm like, yeah, here's my email address. Like, just email me. Like, this is how dumb and naive I was, and then I also had other foreigners who, I would tell them, well, there's barriers, when you're a minority in the United States. And they laughed at me. Like, they literally laughed. I mean, I was 21. I might have been 23 by now. So I'd already had one house, but I really didn't know what I was doing with that first house that I had. And so, these guys like laughed at me like America's the land of the opportunity. Like, no one cares what your background is there. And I'm like, the more I began thinking about their perspective, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're right. And so for me, again, I just feel like foreigners, when you don't have access to that and you're blessed to finally get that, it's like you just take it and you run with it.
Yeah, let's. Jen's making a little trouble here in the comments, but Jen says, I'm a Lynn groupie. I tell her to remember the little people, not specifically Mark because of his height. And Jen is trying to blame Jim for that. But yeah, like I don't know if people are tuning in late, but if you haven't heard, Lynn is also expecting her episode on Bigger Pockets Rookie out on May 12th. So be on the lookout for that. And let's see. My next question was going to be for like Lynn, were there any moments you considered giving up or going back?
No, that was never an option. We had to make it here. There's no going back to Peru for what? To be working 2 or 3 jobs maybe just to make just ends meet. That was never a option of coming back. What Sarah was saying, like people do want to come here, and then I think when you think of America, this is my reality. I don't know if it's everybody else's reality. You think of America, you think of a country that was forged by immigrants 300 years ago. Like you were escaping religion, or you were trying to make a better future for yourself, or trying to get land over here. But my reality is what my story is. Like there are immigrants every day trying to come here and work hard, and yes, there's more opportunities here, but it takes a lot of work for you to take those opportunities because of many differences that we have. Like we don't speak the language, we're not the same color, we have like we're minorities and all those things. Those barriers are there, but you if you compare the countries, for example, me living in Peru, working hard would not amount to much, right? Working hard would make me pay my bills and maybe still keep a household, but over here working hard means I could go to school. Working hard means I could get a university, I can work at the same time. Working hard means I could attain a house on my own. Working hard can means I can help out my family financially. Like it just means more, but it's still very much an effort part. So I think that's what the biggest difference. Immigrants are not afraid of work because we've been working for a long time. So
This is for maybe both of you, but do you think the American dream still exists?
yeah, I'm living mine.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, again, when you're a real well, go ahead, Lindsay. You want to go first? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, when I was growing up, I didn't really have these American dreams as when I came here. Then I had like, oh wow, you can really be, be a college graduate. You can really go to graduate school. You can really own a home. You can really do what you want to do. And when you're surviving, you don't think about that. You don't think like, oh, one day I want to make $1 million. No, you're just thinking of helping out what you can. But over here, really, I feel like there's a lot of space and there's a lot of opportunities for you to be able to dream. And the American dream has changed a lot from what I've seen. It used to be that, you get married, you get a house, you pine out for retirement. But now the American dream has evolved to something different. Like now, my generation don't even see owning properties as something that they want to do. It's more like time or freedom, from what I see. But that's the possibility, your dream can change.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with Lindsay. I think it's evolved and changed quite a bit. What the dream is, it doesn't necessarily have to be like owning real estate, for example. I think too because I've bought my first property out of foreclosure during the GFC. I have a very different perspective about like today's market than most people do. I think even when you guys are messaging on that WhatsApp, I'm like, oh my God, like I lived through the GFC. So that kind of makes me more conservative with certain stuff because I've seen with my own two eyes home values go down to 50% even when the news was telling you, oh no, everything's going to be fine. I've seen it with my own two eyes. I think I grew up in Michigan and that's where I had bought my first house. And so when the auto industries, all three of the big ones here in the United States, went under in the Detroit area, I watched a lot of my friends I grew up with, their parents lost their homes as well. So I think that also contributes to me being more conservative with investing. But for me, I just feel like the dream has changed, and I mean it does every new generation. Things change a little bit. I think what Lindsay said is spot on. A lot of people, and I think COVID helped this in a way, began to realize what's more important, and that's like human life. And I think that's a good thing that came from out of COVID. And so people want their time back more than just constantly trading their time for 20 bucks an hour or whatever. And I think that people are just trying to figure out a new way to have that quality of life that they want. And it might not necessarily be owning a home. I know tons of people. I've got a tenant that's been with me for like 6 years. And I offered to sell this tenant the house, like, I don't know, 4 years ago or something. And I'm like, you sure you want to just keep renting? Like, I'll sell it to you on a deal or whatever, because I'm trying to move more to a different market once I'm done with all paying off these homes or whatever. And like, I'm like, you get a good rate, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, I'm cool with the renting. And I'm like, now I'm like, this dude's giving me like $90,000 in the past, almost 6 years, you know what I mean? And so like, but for him, his dream is he doesn't want the responsibility of home ownership, like I guess with his name on the line. And this guy's actually, he's a soldier. He's pretty high ranking in the army. And I'm like, what is going on, with you? But his dream is like, he likes the peace of mind of not having to worry about major home repairs. He called me Friday, like, there's a big issue. And I'm thinking that he had like got on orders and had to move because I'm going to miss him as a tenant when he does. And so I'm planning for him to leave sometime late next year, I think, because he's gotten extended because he loves me as a landlord. And I'm like, really wanted to curse him out. Like, you're calling me seriously about this? Like the air intake for the HVAC, like that's too easy, right? But for him, he's like, oh, it's a big emergency. And I'm like, seriously, guy, like, are you for real? So I had to laugh with my husband this morning. I'm thinking it's an emergency because he's on orders and I'm never going to find a good tenant, as good as him, So again, his dream is that he likes the peace of mind of not owning a home. And for people like him, tenants like him that want to feel like they've got, they have a house, and he takes really, really good care of this property, probably better than what I would even as a homeowner, maybe. And so for me, I had to learn, or he has taught me the last 6 years, that everyone doesn't have to have the same American dream. It doesn't have to be the white picket fence with the house and the dog and, getting married or, whatever. It can be whatever you want it to in this country. And that's just what makes this country so awesome.
Yeah, I think to that point, yeah, everyone's dream can vary, but I think it's like both of you are saying, it's just the opportunities to what you want to accomplish. Jen does have another question. Says, what were your influences when you came here to keep you motivated? Did you seek it? Same question for Sarah, but I think Sarah looked for advice from old people like Jim, who's in the chat. But Jim's not in the military, but in the military. Hey, someone popped in. Hello.
My daughter.
Um, so Lynn, maybe anything that motivated you?
Talking to people back home, talking to anybody that I went to school with, or talking just to my family that was left behind. Then struggling, me having to help, send money back, which is normal as an immigrant family, talking to just them living on their lives, and then me being in school and working and trying to advance however I can. That was more the motivation for me to keep going, because if I had this opportunity and I wasted, like, what does that say about the people back home that are like struggling?
Mm.
Okay. Sarah, for you?
Yeah, for me, truly listening to people with their regrets, or like I said, I love being around people that are older than me, which, like I've said before, having my daughter at 16 forced me to be around people at least 10 years or plus older than me. And so I'm like, okay, well, what can I learn from these people? And so listening to them tell me things that they did, but a lot of times it wasn't even, hey, do this, this, and this, or it was, hey, do this, this, and this. And then I'd say, well, hey, did you do that? And they're like, no, man, it's the biggest mistake of my life. I never invested and did this. Even this past Friday, I work out at the YMCA, or actually it was Thursday. I lift 2 days a week. And there was an old 80-year-old guy who I see in there all the time, but we've never like had extensive conversation. And he, for whatever reason, decided he wanted to take a picture with me this day, because he does it with everyone in the gym. Like this is his social time, right? And so he's like, can I get a picture with you? You're always in here so busy lifting, and I haven't gotten a picture with you to put on our board or whatever. And some of the other gym rats that are there with me, they had told me about him, and they love doing this with him, whatever. Anyway, I don't even know. It was this craziest thing ever, because a lot of times I get down on myself, like, oh, I could just sell all my houses now and blah, blah, blah. And I told you guys, like, I'm almost to the finish line, like, holy cow, looking at once these are paid off, what they'll roll over and what I can do, right? But like, your mind's your biggest barrier, right? And so this 80-year-old man, not even knowing that I invest in real estate, was the creepiest thing ever, decided to have a long conversation with me about him and his wife and these houses that they built, and they rented out these houses. And I left out of the YMCA after 30 minutes after my workout in tears, because he had no clue of what I do. But it confirmed for me, because one of the things he told me and gave me this old fashioned book with amortization calculations in it. I'm like, sir, they have the internet for that now. But anyways, like, buy this book. And one thing he told me, he said, whatever house you ever live in, don't ever let the mortgage run to 30 years. Well, that's always been my strategy. It was like, I'm just going to buy these houses and pay them off. And so I got to experience last week, even on Thursday, learning from his wisdom. And it wasn't a mistake that he made, because all of the properties he had, again, not knowing this is what I do, I just listened. I chose to just listen, and then just walked out in tears, like, oh, that was so divine for me. Because he told me, he said, I'm 80, about to be 81 years old, and me and my wife don't worry about a thing. So then he proceeds to tell me about his big old house he's got over here that's on the river, in the town where I live at. And he's like, people come there, they'll pay me to fish and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, me and my wife, he's like, I've never had to worry about a thing, because what I derived from that conversation from him and learning from the elders, like I said, or the old people, was that he said the best thing. He's like, if you ever decide to get into real estate, just pay them off. Pay off your rentals. So in the crazy parts, he had these pictures in like a bag he carries with him to the gym. I think his mind's kind of going a bit. He's getting pretty old, but he pulled out like a big, huge, long, like panoramic photo of this estate-sized home that he built years ago. But in the front of it, this is funny, because this is actually what I'm hoping to build. I'm trying to acquire some land now, which that was even more creepy to me. But he wants, like, always put in the front your guest houses, and he said the one on the right, you can rent it out to an elderly tenant. So maybe he was trying to get me to become his landlord. Maybe, I don't know. Wife dies, and then he's like, the one on the left, it's for your kids when they come to visit. So he shared with me how he sold it, and then he began it was weird talking about his real estate investments, and just mom and pop investor like the rest of us, right? And so as I listened to him, I was like, holy cow, I'm on the right track. Because like, I'd say every 4 months, I'm like, I'm just gonna sell all this and just forget it and give it up, or whatever. But then I'm like, dude, I look at, again, 3-4 years from now, where I'll be at, and it's crazy. But sometimes I get this itch, like I'm not doing enough. So yeah, so like I said, for me, learning from others.
Yeah, I think it's great networking. And like you said, just at the gym, you can communicate with different people. And that individual sounds like they have a wonderful relationship, him and his spouse. But Frank is tuning in, or he tuned into the live yesterday. And I think Lindsay also commented yesterday. But part of the discussion got into like prenups and, keeping your wealth and whatnot. So Frank says, what would these amazing women think about the discussion yesterday regarding prenup agreements? So, Lindsay, maybe you can remind us what you commented yesterday.
Yeah. Um, I'm a pragmatic person. So I realize the divorce rate is high here. And that might be a reflection of cultural differences, the times, whatever. But I am pro prenups. If you want to be able to get a prenup with the person that you love, I was telling yesterday that you already have a prenup. Whatever state you are in, they will dictate how you would separate your assets at the end when divorce happens. If divorce happens, obviously nobody wants to have a divorce, but you already have a contract in place. When you sign on the dotted line, you accept this man for marriage or this woman for marriage, you already signed on the dotted line a contract per that state of how you guys are going to divide your assets priorly. So why not have that conversation if in the case of that happens, obviously not wanting it to happen, but if the occasion what happens, I think that Frank was telling you, why don't you have that conversation when you guys love each other, as opposed to when you guys are disconnected from each other and do not, see eye to eye, because most of the divorces are, differences.
That
That
is a great. I would not give any advice on this at all. Sarah, what is your take on this?
So I'm always understanding of anyone's thought process on any of that. Me personally, I will be 6 feet under before me and my husband. That's the only way we're gonna ever not be together. So, and then my husband's my partner. Matter of fact, we were doing some stuff for our trust a couple of weeks ago, and I'm over here like, I don't even know how people could even want to get a divorce after building like what all he and I have built together. And I mean, I told him this years ago, hey, if I'm marrying you, because I'm good all by myself, and I never really thought I'd be married. I thought I'd just backpack the world alone with my daughters, and I'm like, so for me, I just like, first off, I guess I was a little smart one when I married him because I got a really, really, really good husband. But for me, I just it's to me it's too much work, like all of it. Like, I mean, between all the accounts, all of the different investments that we have, the rentals, like I'm like, if you have a problem with me, you can just sleep in unit A and I'll sleep in unit B. And I mean, it's funny, but like I truly, truly mean that. I'm like, if I know that I'm annoying, and that's something else too, is like you have to be honest with yourself about who you are. I know for sure that my husband was the exact person for me when we crossed paths because I have a very strong personality. A lot of times I'm misunderstood. I mean, just since I've been met all of you guys, I've been blown away of like, you guys like my personality. It pushes you guys. And like, it's weird because all my whole life, it's like, you could just sit down and be quiet like everyone else. Why can't you just hush up? Like, why are you always trying to figure out another way? And like I said, my counselor, who's like a life coach for me, told me you're around the wrong people. When you're in the right environment with the right people who want to be pushed or need to be pushed because they're trying to better their lives, they're going to suck you up. Like, just they're going to soak it in, Sarah. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, lady. You're just saying that because you do, life, whatever, these seminars. But I've been seeing that. You guys have blessed me so much. And so my husband, there's not a lot of people who could deal with my strong of a personality. And I'm very fortunate to have him love me for this strength, right? And he's allowed me to push him to better. So for me, if you want to do a prenup, fine. But for me, that's not really, I'm looking for a business partner because that's like she just said, a marriage is, you're in a contract already. States have different laws about different things. A trust can protect you from some of that stuff. But if for he and I, we've built ours together from the ground up pretty much, other than that first one that I purchased. And so, but even then, it's like, I married him because he added value to me and what I was already doing with me and my two kids. So I wasn't marrying anybody unless they were adding value to me and my two kids. So he's a one in a lifetime guy and I'm a one in a lifetime gal for him. And like I said, if you hate me enough, believe you me, I can understand. I get up every day at 4 and I'm like, what are we doing today? Let's go run 7 miles. And we're going to look at all these, houses online. And we went to an old folks community last weekend so I can see what's going on with the market here and took him around for 3 hours. And he just, okay, babe. Yeah. Oh yeah. I can come here. I'd manage all this for them, but for me, yeah, like he's the biggest investment I've ever made beyond, I mean, this buying houses, buying apartment buildings, that stuff can be replaced. But for me, finding a partner that would add value to what my vision was, and then for his vision for his life, I mean, it was a no brainer. Within a year, we were married, and here we are almost 20 years later. So he can live in A and I'll live in B. If you don't like me, I'm not getting a divorce ever.
There's the Sarah Goggins motivation for today. Did you see Frank and Jim at the old folks home that you looked at?
My
No.
God.
No, but Frank, I think Frank is trying to get an interview with you on his YouTube because he says, Sarah, I'm old too. Maybe we can talk sometime.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think Frank or Sarah, maybe you guys can connect and do an interview. Let's see. Jen has another great question. She said, "Why did you ladies decide real estate instead of a different method? Example, stocks or crypto?" Maybe Lindsay, you can go first.
Yeah, so I started investing in FIRE, actually. I started investing in stocks with the FIRE movement. So initially, what I was doing, like in my 20s, was maxing out my 401ks, maxing out my Roth IRAs, learning about the stock market and S&P 500, long haul, conservative. I was a nurse. I was happy, and I find my job rewarding. And in 2020, we all know what the pandemic happened, and I immediately became a COVID nurse, a frontline healthcare worker, and that definitely changed my whole view about nursing. Prior to that, I spent like 10 years in nursing working without any problems, thinking I'm gonna work the next 30 years like this and just retire once I hit retirement age. But when COVID happened and I saw massive amount of people dying every day and me being disregarded as this person that's supposed to be taking care of all the sick people and putting my family at jeopardy, coming back, being isolated, I became severely depressed. I had to get help. I had to get therapy. I had to be on medications, and I decided that I needed to find a different path. That I had to accelerate that retirement age or changing, because all I knew was nursing. All I have done in school was nursing, so I didn't know how else to pivot like then to be a nurse. So that's when I looked at real estate. When you look up Google, you look how do you make money? Probably real estate is one of the things that comes up really highly on that search. So I made that pivot from investing aggressively in retirement accounts and the stock market to real estate.
What about you, Sarah? I don't really know. Do you do other asset classes also?
Yeah, yeah, I've got accounts. I've got every social security number that I get, grandkids included. Like everyone's got brokerage accounts. TSP we had in the military, Roth IRAs as well. And so, but for me, because my husband's, a lot of people now will start to kind of see what me and my husband have been doing, that known us in the military for years, and like, oh, you guys should get into crypto. I'm like, no, thank you. That's real cool and all, but like what I've been doing works. So I'm not going to try to like reinvent the wheel. Now, this next generation, like my son, he has money every month. He plays around with all kinds of different stuff, investments and things like that. But, he has time to lose money. Right. And so, for me, so I do both. But to me, I love real estate because, everyone needs it, right? And even for me, I've had over the years, like I don't ever increase my rents on my tenants without asking them, because of the lifestyle my husband and I have chose to live below our means. I don't need to always push up rents. And so for me, I really enjoy being able to be really like Jesus, like helping people if needed, right? And so when I have tenants that like, hey, can you afford a $50 increase this year? And if they can't, well, actually, I've never had a tenant tell me that they couldn't. And so I like that relationship with the tenants. And then to me, it's more secure real estate because people need a place to live, right? And so, but me being able to be supportive, like I've done Section 8 tenants in the past as well, because I've called the Section 8 office and said, hey, do you guys have any single moms with kids or whatever that, a few kids that need help, and so I've been able to reduce rents or put them to whatever Section 8 says, and have those in my properties as well. And so for me, I like the peace of mind it gives me, but some people it wouldn't. It just depends on how your brain's wired. Like I said, I was telling someone recently, I had 3 ACs go out literally in 3 different houses, literally all within not even 4 days of each other. And so like most people couldn't deal with that stress. But to me, I love real estate because whatever problem that comes from a house, number one, you can do preventative maintenance, but number two, there's always a solution. So even if you got a foundation issue, there's a solution, right? If you've got a roof issue, there's a solution. There's no feelings to me involved other than you. So on occasion, I've had like an older tenant is like, well, I haven't had AC in a week. I'm like, well, it has to, the part has to get ordered. I can't pull a part out the sky, And so on occasion I've had issues that, but my managers deal with that, the rudeness of if you have a rude tenant or something like that. But for the most part, for me, it's very systematic, the things that go wrong in a house. Getting preventative maintenance, it's very, very systematic. So to me, there's really no surprises when you have a little bit of a background like in construction or home systems. There's really not a lot of surprises that go. I mean, even okay, you have houses in a flood zone, so you have insurance. You expect floods, or if you just expect everything's gonna break, to me, it gives me a peace of mind, if that makes sense. So that's why for me, I went into real estate. Real estate heavy. I'm more heavy in real estate than I am anything else. I feel like our money in the stock market, to me, that's money that we could afford to lose. I don't could care less about that as well. It's more like play money, so to speak. But yeah, real estate is very predictable, if that makes sense.
Well, I know, Sarah, you're saying you may have to bounce off a little early. So if you have to bounce off, thanks for joining us. But we do have a special guest here. So I want to, Cynthia Contreras is here. Frank's wife is in the chat. And she says, thank you. And just for the record, we have a prenuptial that states, I get it all. But she says, Sarah, absolutely forever. So unfortunately, Frank and Cynthia weren't able to attend the event this past year in Vegas, but Frank was supposed to receive a belt also. Sarah, you did receive one for speaking, but it sounds like you may not be able to make it next year, I think, right? I saw on the WhatsApp.
Yeah, I was telling actually when I was talking to Lindsay, a buddy of mine I was in the army with, he lives in the DC area. And about 2 years ago, he met this awesome, really, really awesome Peruvian lady, actually. And I've been able to go up and meet her. He's like a brother to me. Actually, all the guys I served with, I'm like their annoying sister or their mother. And so he called me like what, 3 months ago, 3 months ago. And he's like, I'm going to really need you to be in Peru in January of next year. And I'm like, I have other commitments. And he's like, you need to be at my wedding. So barring any craziness with him, really be with him. I'll have to go to a wedding in Peru. It'd be like late January, but I may stay for a while. So it just depends. It's between that and then Keith having to move. We have a lot of craziness. And then my son with football, that's just a whole nother ridiculous story. Lord help me. So yeah, I might not be able to come, but I think I'm going to press the gas. Or if I come, I may have to come alone. And I had expected to bring my whole family. And then of course the kids want to go to Peru. So I'm like, I don't know. You might messing with my money to pay off these houses.
Well, hopefully we get to see you again. It was a lot of fun, and maybe Lindsay will be speaking next year. And I just want to remind everyone again, if they haven't heard, Lindsay's Bigger Pocket rookie episode should be out on May 12th. Also, go check out her channel and please subscribe. But Flavio does have a question for you, Lynn. He says, "Why Gary?" So I guess he's talking about Gary, Indiana.
Yeah. So like I said, I wanted to accelerate my retirement or being able to have cash flow to move away from my W-2 because I was not happy anymore. And so I needed a market that cash flow. And I live in Los Angeles, California, one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the country. And I looked at my market in my backyard, even, 20 miles, 30 miles out. I'm like, I cannot afford a 20% down payment anywhere around me. There's no way. Like, it's just me. Like, I'm the only backup. So I just needed to find an out of state market. So I started looking like podcasts, like Bigger Pockets, Real Estate Rookie, books by Brandon Turner, David Green, whatever you can find online. And I had the opportunity I was a traveling nurse. So I had the opportunity to take a contract in Illinois, Chicago, Illinois. So I thought at 2022 that, I could just house hack there because I was already house hacking in my home here in LA. I was renting out rooms to traveling nurses. So I'm kind of landlording already. So let me do the same thing. I can just buy something, put 3%, 5% down, like the Bigger Pockets were telling me. Like all the books that I read, it was telling me like just house hack. And But then I was looking at the market in Illinois, and the moratoriums were going on. So you could not evict anybody. People were not getting rent. People were getting applying for programs for rent reimbursement and things like that. But I was just like, well, my first property cannot be something like that. I needed more security. I needed more backups. So I started looking at neighboring states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Indiana. And doing YouTube University, I guess I must have like manifested it or something. But I found Masky Finance and I found Millennial Mike YouTube channel, both of them. At that time in 2022, 2023, they were smaller creators, there were smaller channels. And then if I left a comment, I started leaving comments on every single video and liking every single video just so they know I'm interested in their channel. And after a while, I started just direct messaging them saying like, hi, my name is Lindsay. I really want to have my foot into real estate. I really like what you're posting, your numbers, how transparent you are. Can we please like schedule a phone call? Maybe we can meet. At the time, I didn't know like Millennial Mike was in Washington and Masky Finance was in Florida. So I was like, if we cannot meet, we can just like anytime will be appreciated. I just have a few questions because all of their channels, I know you guys have checked them out in the past. They're pretty transparent. Like this is what I put down as a down payment. This is what my closing costs cost. This is what everything that I had to do before renting out the house, and they were getting cash flow over 10%. So 10% yield return. So I was just like, okay, if they can do it, then maybe I can do it too. So I started talking to them, and their main market was Gary, but again, coming from bigger pockets and coming from other real estate books, I knew that Gary doesn't have the economic markers for me to be like financially ready to invest there. So I started investing in this market midway from Gary to Chicago downtown called Hammond. And that was actually my first investment property that I bought. Once I settled on Hammond, I let the rent collect for a whole year before I looked at Gary because I wanted proof of concept. I was like one person from California investing out of state because I follow two random people on social media looking at this market. So I'm like, I want something that's going to work. So once I got comfortable with Hammond, I realized, Gary's only like 10 minutes away from Hammond. So let me see if I can move there. And that was the second property that I bought. And I bought the property for $55,000 and I was able to rent it to a Section 8 watcher person for 1,100. So talk about the 2% rule there. And I guess that just cemented Gary as my market.
Where your personal agent Jen is messaging me on the side, and she wants me to ask you and Sarah also, how many properties do you folks have so everyone can know how badass you folks are? So Lynn, how many rentals or properties do you have right now?
I have 10 and I'm building an ADU, which will make it 11 end of the year.
Oh, wow. So I just have 4. So I've done this 6 times. But then I walked away from one and then I decided to sell another one. So I've just got 4 now. And that's what I was telling you guys, I'll have them all paid off in about 36 to 48 months, which will net me about 10 grand a month. And then I'll take that. Well, actually at that point in time, because once they're paid off, our income level is that where I can actually pay cash every year. But I'm just not willing to do that with the houses not being paid off, if that makes sense. So for me, I could have, scaled up a long time ago, but I don't, for me, after meeting Mr. Zuber and then even talking with Mr. McElroy, Mr. Kenny, I don't know if anyone knows who Ken McElroy is. So he mentored me for a little bit of time too. And same thing, asked the old guys like, hey, should I scale up right now? All this crazy COVID's going on, yada, yada, yada. This is how much we make a year, blah, 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 blah. And then he's like, I just say have 10 paid off houses. Like you're on the right track, but it's hard when you see people around you like, hey, I've got 20 or I got 30 doors. But when I began to run the math, like I just said, I'm going to have 4 paid off houses that's paying me, 10 grand a month. where it's like I only have four ACs to worry about, four refrigerators to worry about, four lawns or whatever. And then for me, if I choose to, I can go ahead and turn that money over to do more, which I'm a big giver. So I prefer to give, honestly, than to consume. And so for me, that's why I made the decision that I made, was just to acquire, and then just hang on to them and then just make double payments. Like I said, my big football players slowing me down. I'm serious, but you know what? You guys should give them a follow, because eventually you probably might actually see them on television on Saturday morning, or sooner
Do
than
it.
later.
Yeah, that sounds like his food budget, like you were saying, the 10K a month.
I mean, it is
Use food
between
budget.
go to private institutions, between their education and then feeding him, which he's my first son, so I never imagined. I mean, I know I've heard all boys eat, but he's a sign of the size of an NFL line. He has to have at least 5,000 calories a day, because he's huge with weights. Matter of fact, he just PR'd 405 on his squat, and he's only 14. And so 250 bench press. But anyways, going back to the property, so for me, that was kind of my strategy all along, was like, hey, if I just buy one and pay it off, right? Then I can just go ahead and roll that money over, if you know what I mean, like later on. But I think I told someone in another video, I also knew I never was wanted to get out the army, because I wanted the lifetime benefits that you get as a soldier, and which really a lot of it's healthcare, like the cost that we don't pay for anything. I mean, I could get cancer tomorrow and there's no out of pocket costs for me or my husband. And so for me, I knew that we would always have that retirement as well. So between all of the paper investments we've had since we've been, you join 18, 19 years old, they put you on a plan. I mean, you could choose to opt out, but you get yourself on a plan. Between that and just buying a house every time we moved around, which, like I said, the exception of we lived in Europe, I did not buy. We lived in Hawaii, I did not buy. You know why? And yeah, and so for me, like I said, I ended up hanging on to the four that we have, and then here in a couple of years, which it's tough. Like it's tough. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm almost there. Like, oh, I could just sell all these and I could invest all this, elsewhere, but I'm too close to the finish line. And so my husband and I, again, knowing that we didn't want to get out of the military at all, between our retirements from that, I mean, if I only decide just to keep these four rentals, like that, or that's all I need is these four properties, which that's kind of what made me fall in love with Zuber, was because I'm like, there's someone else that thinks, really, you only need 4 units. And I mean, he's spot on. When you read his stuff, like, you really truly only need, you buy 4 units at 250, which that was his market. I was able to get stuff acquired for cheaper than that, right? Over the years. And so for me, that's where I'm at. I may add, 5, 6 more properties later on. It just depends on my risk tolerance. I don't need it. But between Zuber telling me if could do it all over again, he'd have, just 20 single family homes. And with single family homes, people stay longer, right? You don't have a lot of turnover. They usually take care of, like, it's their home. So between that, and then, like, once I talked to Mr. McElroy, and he was like, I said, I'm looking at, if I had, 100 units or 50 units, what you'd get per door. And then you have to pay all these other people too, right? For all these different other costs, like admin costs. And so he was like, you're on track, Sarah. Like, just keep doing what you're doing. I'm like, all right, I'm done. I'm gonna stay the course. So
Well, Sarah, there's a couple of I know you have to leave soon, you said, but let me
I
just
speak to another football fields. I could put y'all on not video and mute in a minute, but I just
okay.
like, go ahead.
Okay. Jen says, though, we love your personality, Sarah. We can cry together all day long.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
Hyder just says he's loving the ladies session. Growing up with my mom and sister both struggle. I love to see the ladies win.
Thank you. Thank
Um,
Go Hider.
yeah, so BuzzTune, Mikey, he's in Hawaii. He also invests in Pittsburgh with me, but he says, once getting into real estate, what changes did you see in yourself that surprised you? So, Lynn, any
I think you cut off market. What was the question?
Once getting into real estate, what changes did you see in yourself that surprised you?
That I am more capable that I lead to be, because I have a lot of imposter syndrome of, like, I wouldn't even call myself an investor up until I was investing for like 3 years. And I would say yes, I have like 3 houses, but I'm not an investor. Like that's not who I am. And this community actually made me change that view. I was looking at myself because you guys are all about networking and meeting more people in your area or people that are also investing and get your network larger. And then for me, the first 2 years, even though I had like the connections online to 2 people that were already investing, I felt like I was not really doing it. So I had to learn that about me, that I know I'm actually, this is a business. I'm actually creating wealth through investing. I'm not just like, this is not practice or a game or anything like that. Not that I thought I was handling it like a game, but I was just changing my mindset and just believing in myself that I'm just more than what I think I am. I think that's what changed.
Any changes for you, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, like, very similar to what Lindsay's saying as well. Like, I mean, for you, matter of fact, when I started going to see another counselor about 4 years ago, like, I always called myself a stay-at-home mom. Actually, is what I did. And so again, she owns her own business. She had her private practice, and so after she got to know me about a year and a half, she's like, "Why do you call yourself a stay-at-home mom?" And I'm like, "Because I do. I'm a mom, and I'm at home all day long." And she's like, "Yeah, but you come in here and you have like 20,000 steps on your watch and like you manage a lot." But I had never thought about it. She's like, "Sarah, you run your own business." And at the time I hadn't put everything in like into LLCs because it didn't make sense to me, like just different things. And so, and I was like, "Oh," but I mean, even for that, it took me a couple of years to realize like what I had accomplished. And I think the other crazy thing for me was like, because I never invested for cash flow, like if that makes sense. Like the Army moves us although when my husband and I were younger, we always listened, like we had listened to Bigger Pockets. I love Susie Orman because I was always just chasing stability. So for me, I've never counted ever on a tenant ever to pay the rents on our houses either. So I always budgeted that from our dual military income, and we just chose to live below our means. And so I always, like, every month a rent check would come, like, "Ooh, I could make 2 payments this month," or "Ooh, okay, we didn't go out to do this and this. I can make 2.5 payments this month," or whatever. And I have everything set up to go right on it. So I think the big shocker to me was I'd never done a net worth statement either, because that's not why I invested. I wanted to be able to have extra money after I got out the Army, not while I was in the Army, because when you're in the military, all of your basic needs are taken care of. So you have health care insurance. There's no copays. All your dental is taken care of. There's no copays for your family members as well, barring like orthodontics or whatever. So for me, the big shock to me was the wealth that I had built, because and I don't even know what happened in the very beginning of 2020. We first got here like July 2020. And I don't know, I was reading something. I'm like, "Let me sit down and do like a whatever this net worth thing is, whatever." I was trying to figure out how to stop spending extra money on groceries, actually, is what it was. Because my son was like starting like the puberty stage a little bit. Like, why am I spending $3,000 a month on groceries? This is ridiculous. That's three more mortgage payments, right? And so I sat down to do that. I think I want to say it was Dave Ramsey I was looking at, and he's like, "Oh, here's a net worth thing. You put it in." And so for me, I was like, and I called my husband, like, "Keith, what the heck? Did you know? Did you know that we have all this equity?" Like, my husband's just like, "No, man, I just go to work. Like, I'm just going to work, and I mean, whatever. You're always focused on promotion." But again, it was stability, stability, stability. So for me, the military gives you stability when you join it, right? So I didn't have to worry about, I mean, other than going to war, which I joined because I wanted to be a soldier. So that's kind of a given. But like how Lindsay dealt with having to deal with like how they treated her at her work and stuff like that, I didn't really have to deal with that. I mean, we had the vaccine mandate in the military, but like they give you 9,000 shots when you join. So I never have had different worries that civilians have. And so for me, like I said, my whole thing was we buy a house, live in it. We buy a house well below our means, but we're authorized from the bank, and we're just going to live in it. We're going to pay this thing off. And we're going to, when the Army tells us we have to move again, we're going to put a tenant in there, and we're going to partner with our tenant to just pay the house off. Because I didn't need cash flow. The Army gave us plenty enough money with our basic pay, our housing allowance, our food allowance to pay for all of our needs. So for me, I'm taking all the rest of my check and I'm investing it in real estate and putting it into our version of a 401k. And then, of course, every time a kid was born, I opened them account as well for education, a brokerage account, whatever. And so for me, like I said, I think what changed about me was like, holy crap, this is the wealth. I had always done taxes too, so I'm like, okay, whatever. But I just didn't think of it really because I didn't. That's not why I invested. I didn't care. Again, I just wanted to get them paid off. So yeah.
Well, before we get into the next serious question, we'll answer some of the troublemaker ones from Jen and Frank. But Jen is saying, Sarah, I guess you not attending the event possibly next year. Is this an excuse not to see Mark? And then Frank is talking about you not buying a property in Hawaii is because he said Frank is asking because you didn't want to be my neighbor. So,
God. Oh
How do they
God.
know?
wait a minute. But okay, back to Jen's serious question. It says, does your family know you're into real estate investing? Do they encourage you and think you're doing the right thing or making a big mistake? So, Lindsay.
Um, I think my immediate family know, like my parents and one brother. No, my sister. My sister knows. And then mostly because they don't um, understand uh, what I'm trying to do. Like they don't understand. Like when I say I want to retire early, I want to travel, I want to live in different countries, I want to learn new languages. They're like, oh, that's you're just talking out of your butt, I guess. But it's not like they don't think it's attainable, real. And then so when I say, oh, I'm investing out of state in Indiana, somewhere that initially I never been, they're like, "Well, you're just being foolish. You don't know what you're talking about. Who is these people that you're talking to?" So it's just basically not motivating, like not they don't understand. So that's why I kind of like stand off from talking to them about it. And I think now maybe they understand a little bit more, but it's been like almost 2.5 years. So now they see like, oh wow, she's actually moving quickly now. And then because they know I have 10 properties and whatsoever, but
Oh, wait,
it's
wait, hold on. So, do they know about your YouTube channel and do they know you're going to be on Bigger Pockets?
no, no.
Why not?
I mean, I may have mentioned it that I have a, no, actually, I don't think I mentioned a YouTube channel because my parents are not of that thinking. They don't know what Bigger Pockets is. They don't know what social media is. My parents are in the 70s actually, so they're older. They're actually the main reason they're aging quickly, and my dad is almost deaf. So one of the reasons that I have motivating me is that I want to take care of them and I want to make sure that they're okay. They don't need to be working until they're 80, and that's why I'm doing this too. So it's just different, I guess, a different type of um, generation that they don't understand. They would like me to keep on my W-2 job forever, and that's in their minds the best thing to do.
Well, I suggest maybe you let them know about your Bigger Pockets episode that I think they'll enjoy because um, my other live, I think Monday or Tuesday, I had another firefighter on, Aaron Foster, and we were talking about net worth and things like that. And I guess he posted it on Facebook, and his parents saw him post that, so decided to tune in and listen. And the dad messaged him and like, "Oh, I heard you talking on some podcast," and he goes, "You actually sound pretty intelligent. I'm impressed." But I think, as my friend Aaron was kind of like, "Oh, Dad, it only took you 44 years to compliment me, but
Yeah.
then, so I think it's good to let them know and see what you're doing, and I think they'll appreciate, what you're putting out there. Um, Sarah, are you still there? Can you hear us? Okay.
Yeah, I'm still here. Yep, I'm still here. I was gonna second on Lindsay a little bit, but I think I told someone on another channel. I read this book years ago called "Crossing the Tracks for Love." Actually, when me and my husband got married, it was a book. It was a spin-off book to a textbook I had in graduate school, and it talks about when people grow up in different socioeconomic classes, like there's certain rules to these classes. And again, growing up in middle class, me growing up in poverty, there was tension that we had, for example, about eating the rice and beans because that was too easy for me to do versus him because he didn't grow up with scarcity. And so with Lindsay, I think my family's never really known either. I have an older sister now, like who she's known over the last several years, but she like, and I finally got her to buy her own property. This was her first one; it's her primary residence. At some point in time, like later during COVID, she ended up having like a 5% rate, so that'll tell you how much later when rates dropped. But a lot of times, like that's what it is like people just try to dampen or like rain on your parade because they really don't understand. And I think even for Lindsay, when I bought my parents' house out of foreclosure, obviously my dad had died. It was, in bankruptcy, whatever. But I had the same heart. I just wanted to take care of my parents because I never saw myself getting married, right? And so, again, me buying a house and getting another house when the Army moved me and just partnering with a tenant to get it paid off, that would allow me to better take care of my parents, right? And so for me, hang on one second. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so for me, when you're dealing with people, that just don't understand, what you have going on, or whatever, why you're investing or whatever, it's tough, right? And so it's just easier just to keep it to yourself, so that way nobody is trying to like be more negative to you, if that makes sense. And so for me, it gets to a point where it's like, you know, it's not really worth your time. And I think after my sister saw come into the different houses that we lived in and just really her seeing me be able to give and do for others, I think it finally like shocked her. It was like, okay, wait, what are you doing again now? Or even like I've got friends that say I had a friend who went through, they spent I think almost $300,000. This guy got back pay from the VA. He got some other things that had gone on, and she's known me all my life, what I've been doing, right? And still, like, one day when I get money, I'm going to ask you to help us invest, and like literally spent all the money. And then later on, it's like, oh, I think I want to invest now. And I'm like, oh, do you know what I could have done with 300 grand, the lump sum? And then you had a household increase of income double, after that. And so I think sometimes, again, it's a mindset. And coming to being with you guys finally woke me up to the mindset that I have that I didn't realize was an asset.
Yeah, I remember asking. I have an extended family member that before I was starting to invest, when I was thinking, oh, like maybe I should do real estate, I reached out to him and he basically told me that um, I couldn't do it because I was just doing it alone. And then I had to find somebody to marry and live on one income and then off a cash, like pay off my house cash and then buy a property cash. And then I stopped reaching out to him because I believe I could do it on my own, and then I have done it. But at that time, that was not a positive advice that he kept giving me, so I just didn't continue on. Oh no, Sarah left.
I'm back. I'm back. I just was pulling away from my house. The Wi-Fi disconnected. Sorry, you can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh,
Okay,
yes.
cool. Wait, so Lindsay, you said. Sorry, I have to ask a question, Mr. Mark. You said. Let me make sure I heard that correctly. You said someone told you that you had to have a partner to invest and that you had to have a husband. And who was this you reached out to?
This is like an uncle that he has 4 properties paid off cash here in Los Angeles,
Uh huh.
and I think he's just older, and then he came in with the like from a positive place of like, oh, you have to do it the same way I did it, which is like get married, live on one person's income, and pay your properties cash. And when you're looking at properties here in Los Angeles cash, that's like how do you save $1 million to pay off a property? Like that will take you 20 years if you're very diligent about it. So basically, he told me wait until you get married so you can live of somebody one person's income, and then you can do that. And that was not very encouraging. So I stopped reaching out. And then this is somebody that knows my family too. So that's why I think
Oh,
a
that's
lot of the
crazy.
things that I kept to myself because some people think that there's only one way to success, and that's not true.
Yes, I had my own brother tell me a few years ago, with all the crazy things that have gone on in the country politically, and he's like, we can't do such and such, and we can't do such and such, and we don't have access to no trust fund. We're not trust fund babies. And I was like, actually, all five of my kids, they are. So I was like, I'm not really sure. He's like, I don't know. You can only do that because of blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, nope, that's not true either. Right. And so, again, you guys at ORAT have helped me to understand the strength of my mind, even more, or like to help me believe that I'm not crazy, because I always find a way, because sometimes people will tell you, like, you can't do that, you can't do that, or whatever. And so, it will be like, well, can I not do that? Right. And so I think I told you before, Lindsay, I think when you and I and Jen were talking the last time, that was some of the excuses I hear people say, is that, well, you were only able to do that, Sarah, because you had a husband. And I'm like, no, actually, the husband could make it worse if you had a partner, because, I mean, like, truly, if that's why I said my husband is my best asset I could have ever. I mean, it was the smartest decision I made to marry my husband, and vice versa. He'll tell you the same thing, because he even he likes me. Like, my husband's not he's not very materialistic either, but he's also like, well, we gotta and if I was serious about, hey, we gotta have rice and beans, he would do it as long as he could see the vision for what we're doing. Like, hey, we can get three more houses as soon as we pay off these four, and then we could go do this and this. All right, cool, no problem. He just has to see it, like, kind of with some pictures or something, right? And so for me, like, and I've told people, like, if you've got a crappy husband, like, if my friend I just told you about, there's issues with her husband, that as to why the $300,000 were blown through, right? And then it's like, now, well, I still really want to invest. I'm like, you should have called me $300,000 ago, right? But because of the tension that she had had in the past with her husband, and her husband not knowing some things too, I mean, it ended up being their demise, to be honest with you, financially. And so for me, again, my journey started out alone doing this. I just was smart enough to find someone who would add value to my life, which was my husband. But I would have done it either way, with or without him.
So Lindsay, I want to so kind of piggybacking on Jen's question about any stories you want to share that made you want to quit. Was there also any barriers you face as being like an immigrant investing and also being a woman?
Yeah, I think we talked about it in the past of like how I had a very incident, like very early on, somebody like at a real estate meetup yelling on my face for trying to explain to me tax liens or the market or tax sales. And I guess I don't know. But um those are things that come with just being a woman. I mean, to be 100% transparent, like women could not get property until 1974. So the fact that a lot of women are not in real estate, it's due to history and many barriers that we had from, getting rights and equal pay and being able to work and vote and all those things. So there's going to be a learning curve for a lot of us, and a lot of us that are not in real estate, that it's going to be not something that we are in a lot of these rooms. So it's always like humbling to go to a real estate meetup and then there's like 95% men, 5% women, including, I think Orat is more of a mix for so. But if you do go to many other meetups or meetings and networking events, then you will find basically what I'm saying is that. So it's like you're alone almost, right? And it could be quite intimidating because you're in a room full of men that are older, have strong voices, and maybe have way more knowledge than you. But if that's the case, then you can be intimidated, but you can really let that stop you from learning. So I think one of like getting over the humps is like, okay, well, yeah, if I'm not well versed in your markets or seller financing or buying or off market or direct mailing, that's all fine. Like not knowing is fine. But don't let that hold you from like learning or being able to make yourself known in these rooms and make yourself known that you want to learn and want to invest in real estate. So yeah, I think that's one of the barriers that I keep trying to get on off on.
Sarah, for you, being a woman and trying to get into real estate and investing, any obstacles you faced in the beginning?
Um, Yeah, I think a lot of times people just would always think it's my husband. Now, like I said, I mean, I would say he's more of like the financier of stuff than he is like the thinking about it or whatever. I've always been a tomboy my whole life. I always enjoyed to go outside and play, build tree forts with my older brother, or play with boys. Anyways, I have a little bit more probably testosterone than most girls do. Um, so I think we might have touched on this before, Lindsay, about like when you're dealing with contractors for stuff, that's usually kind of funny because a lot of times they expect that you don't have the knowledge about it, which I get because most women actually don't. So I mean, I don't ever get offended by it because most women actually don't. Or like for me, I mean, I'll give you an example with my husband last week because again, I've lived in so many different houses. Like I've kept the four, but I've literally lived in a lot of different houses all over the world. So I've gotten really good with like handyman repairs, even though I've never done most of our repairs because we moved from the house, right? So there was an issue with the current house we're living in with the dish disposal about maybe 2 weeks ago. And I tasked my husband, like, yeah, I need you to go figure it out. I don't feel like calling a contract, like figure out okay, yeah. He goes and tinkers around. Like, yeah, you're going to probably need to call someone. So by Monday morning, I was pissed off enough. So I put in a work order. And then Monday morning, I'm like, I'm going to figure this out on my own. Hold on a minute. So I took all the plumbing apart and whatever. So I called them at work and I'm like, I had the drain going with the grinder going after I had fixed it. I was like, you hear that sound? You owe me an $85 service call to fix it. And so that's the stuff that's kind of neat to me because even that, like my husband can fix stuff. We were both engineers together in the Army, but like a lot of times people don't expect that from a woman either. But I think my time I spent in the Army, I was always the only woman in a platoon full of 70 guys, 40 guys here and there. And I've definitely proved myself. That's why I said I've got brothers in the Army that will tell you like Sarah will outwork all of us. Now it breaks a woman down sooner, like it broke my body down sooner than it did theirs. But I've always been pretty strong. And so I think that biggest barrier is that they're always like, well, where's your husband? Where's the guy? I'm like, no, I'm actually the guy. So like, I think I told you I went to this old folks property that they're building. It's a developer building it not too far from where we live at. And like, my husband's going on, he likes to look at the stuff that like women would like, oh, these are nice granite countertops. I'm over like, hey, where's the numbers at on these buildings? And the guy's like, I say, what's the most one? What's the highest I could spend if I wanted all the upgrades? It was a Pulte developer. He's like, oh, 900,000. I'm like, you think that's going to hold in this market? Yeah. He's a salesman. Yeah, I'm telling you not. It's not going to, right? So we go through, but even like, it was funny because me and the man in the office ended up talking for a half hour. And my husband and daughter are literally going around like, yeah, these windows, yeah, this paint color, like, and that's, again, what my husband's good at. Like, hey, people will like this, like that. But he's really, really masculine, though. So that's weird, too. He's like, but he has a better eye for that. He grew up with all sisters, actually. And whereas like I grew up with my two brothers running around in the woods. And so he's really good at knowing like things that women will like until of course he met me. I'm like, I just need a backpack and some boots, which I think he was intrigued by me. Like, oh, this is cool. You're really low maintenance. Exactly. That's why you have these houses almost paid off. Right. And so yeah. So to me, again, I'm able to laugh about it. Lindsay, you probably, still being what, 5 years you've been invested now. So like, it's a struggle at first. I've had a lot of guys try to pull the wool over my eyes, but I always had a buddy I could call up that I was in the Army with too. Like, hey, hold on a minute, dude. Hey man, do you know about this, and this, even on my cars or this in the house? Like, yeah, man, get under there with the wrench and do whatever. So my resources of like male soldiers has always been really helpful to me. Even when I got out and my husband had to deploy, I've always had brothers I could call. Like, yeah, there's this contractor here right now, and I would literally call right now on the phone. Like, he's telling me this, and he's like, nah, man, tell him to do this, and this, and give you back half your money. So for me, I kind of do really well with sparring with men, because I've kind of learned their communication style when I was in the Army. So it's been all right for me.
All right, so Flavio says contractors get, I think he means contractors take advantage of women. So yeah, this was a fun one. I just want to remind everyone, Tuesday, I'll be going live with Dion from Dion Financial Talk and Brandon, Build to Rent Texas. They're going to have a slight debate on net worth. They both have a
Okay.
different view on, is net worth something that you really should care about, I guess. Oh, well, and then I'll give you guys one last question after, but Andy's asking, Sarah, when's your YouTube channel coming out?
Not gonna happen. I literally have football 7 days a week, and my son will be starting on varsity as a freshman. And he said he's huge, and I have recruiters. I mean, it's ridiculous what I have going on already. So with my 5 kids and 2 grandkids, like what works for me is coming on your guys' channel. So anyone who wants me to come on, I have no problem. If you're local, I can meet up. I'm trying to meet with a guy in Jacksonville now, but I'm so busy with, the South has football basically 9 months out of the year. So like you have a son that big, yeah, your life's over for the next 4 years, like literally. So
All right, final question for both of you to wrap things up then. What does financial freedom mean to you personally, not just financially? So Lindsay.
Personally means freedom to do anything. I'm not sure if I ever gonna stop working. The career that I have, I'm a nurse practitioner now. But I definitely, real estate can give me that flexibility to open my own practice, maybe open a non-profit organization because I concentrate in mental health. And so that's something that I really passionate about, and it's brought me a lot of like rewarding and joy and in my field, my career. And so I don't think I'll ever stop doing that, but also just flexibility and options. To do whatever I want, wherever I want. I was telling Sarah that I was like, she's lived in many countries with her children. And I'm like, this is one of the greatest gifts you can give to your children
yeah,
because they're able to see different cultures, different languages, different people, different types of ways of living. And then like not one correct way, like no, my way is the way, not this religion is the way, but everything that you can see. So for me, that's like very valuable. That's how I want to spend my time.
Sarah, financial freedom looks like to you?
really it's being in a position to be able to give to others like freely. I think when I got pregnant at 16, I always saw so many kids have to drop out of school or were in bad situations, maybe living with parents or things like that. So I had always wanted to actually open a home for teenage parents, whether they were men or women, and they could come there and finish school, have help with their kids while they're doing schoolwork, and then be able to have a roof over their head without all the outside noise. Um, and so even so for me, being able to build that still, and then like I said, I love to be able to give anonymously to people. Like you're in the store and I see someone's card decline for food and you can tell clearly the stress on their face. There's been times that I've been able just to step in, and I do it in a way like, they'll hang on a minute, I got to go get another card, or hang on, I'm making a phone call to, see if I can get some money transferred, hold on, and I just go up there and just swipe my card. And then I'll literally go to another aisle because I don't want them to know it's me. So I'll just like, hey, get the cal. My kids know we do this as a family, right? And being able to do that for people for the rest of my life until the day that I die is truly what gives me joy. Because, or being able to say, hey, you've never been to Disney World. Hey, we're going to pay for your kid to come. Or, hey, here's a trip for a family. Because those are things that I never got to experience as a child, where people would invite you to dinner and say, hey, we can't go because we don't have enough money for dinner. So even for me, it's a practice in our home. We don't invite people anywhere with us unless we're paying for everything for those people. And to be able to do that for people and see how much it's changed their life blesses me. And so that's why I've just been in such a hurry to get these 4 homes paid off, because I know when that's done and where God has brought us from with the Army and all these other investments that we have, I'll be able to just continue to give to others in abundance. But to me, it's really important to kind of do it as much anonymously as I can. So, or put money in a mailbox or whatever. And it doesn't have to be a lot. You never realize, when we lived in Hawaii, I used to give away Starbucks card anonymously to people I could tell were having a bad day. I'd put it on their car. I'd handwrite a message, but they never knew who it was from. And I went viral on a Facebook page for Schofield Barracks because there's this lady, no one knows who she is. You just see the back of her left this card on my window, and the messages I would see on these
Now I
posts,
know who she is.
yeah, they wouldn't. Well, they don't. Well, they might now, but um, I would go on there and just weep at night. And I was dealing with bad post-traumatic stress during this time too. But I'm like, I gotta find something outside what I'm dealing with to help others. And I cannot tell you how far a $5 Starbucks card went. And seeing people saying, hey, I was contemplating suicide today. I was so stressed out. And somebody saw that I was stressed out and gave me a coffee on them and said, hey, enjoy. Seeing how $5 changed people's lives. Every first and 15th of the month when I got paid, I would go load. And even the Starbucks workers, like, there's this lady in here again. I'm like, if anyone comes in here and asks you, don't tell them it's me. Or I would send my kids so no one would know it was me. And yeah, just being able to give, man. Like being able to give to people, like I said, $20, paying for someone's sports fees or something. You just never know who you could reach. My son bought someone cleats last week that is big like him. The mom can't afford cleats. And it's like, hey, these are hand-me-downs. I got off of like eBay. Like they were mine. You can fit my old cleats, which is a complete lie, right? So the kid just thought he was getting Matt's hand-me-downs. But to see this kid immediately do better out there at practice because he had new cleats, but seeing my son and my kids want to do that, like that's the most ultimate freedom to me. Like I'll continue to drive a 30-year-old car to give to people like that, right? So that's me.
I think that's a great way to wrap it up today. But Andy just does say, I knew she was going to say that about our YouTube channel, and you both are inspiring. Jen says, you guys are an inspiration and changing many lives, especially women. And yeah, we'll wrap it up with Jen's final comment. And she's, thanks for coming on. I'm sure you weren't sure since Mark was hosting, but I think this is a great way to wrap it up. You guys are both inspirational. Like I said, Lindsay's episode, Bigger Pockets, May 12th. So be on the lookout for that. And Sarah, go your son's football Instagram page, I think, or go follow that.
Yeah. So yeah, you can actually, I think there's a couple guys that have it. It's at Matthew. Well, actually, I think he put Real Matthew G. It's at REAL Matthew MATHIEU G. Or if you type in Instagram Big M in Savannah, Georgia, you'll see him. He has to, because he's a minor, he has to say okay. He'll go on your thing now. But I could probably put it on the our WhatsApp. I could put it on there as Instagram. But yeah, man, I just want to say one last thing, Lindsay. If ain't no one told you, girl, I am proud of you. Like you have inspired. I mean, I'm serious. I'm gonna cry when I get off here. You have inspired me so much to keep pushing. Last week I wanted to sell all my houses with 3 ACs going down at once, and like to hear your story is so inspiring to me. Like you've blessed me, girl.
Likewise, Sarah. I mean, almost like, your story is so close to my sister's too. And then I can't even imagine like what you must have gone through, and so
For sure.
inspirational. So well spoken too.
Thank you. And Mark, I love your interviewing tactics are just amazing. Like anytime, brother, like you're so calm. It must be it's that Hawaiian spirit is what it is.
Oh, I just read all the great comments coming in, so I'm just glad everyone tunes in and has great comments. I'm just here pressing buttons and laughing at all the trouble everyone's making. Well, everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'll see everyone Tuesday, and have a great rest of the weekend.